Hey guys, it's Naz here. Today I thought I would do a little ramble about something I get a lot of questions about, which is motivation. A lot of people ask me how I manage to keep myself motivated, how I'm so productive, and just along those sorts of questions. So I thought I would talk about what motivates me and how I stay motivated to do the work that I do. So I thought that I would start off by showing you guys probably one of my favourite Tumblr posts I've ever seen because it sums up motivation so perfectly. It's got some foul language in it, so maybe put your headphones on if you got kids around or your parents around. So the quote goes, the question is, how do you keep yourself motivated to practice? And the artist responds, fuck motivation. It's a fickle and reliable little dick fuck that isn't worth your time. Better to cultivate discipline than to rely on motivation. Force yourself to do things. Force yourself to get out of bed and practice. Force yourself to work. Motivation is fleeting and it's easy to rely on because it requires no concentrated effort to get. Motivation comes to you and you don't even have to chase after it. Discipline is reliable. Motivation is fleeting. The question isn't how to keep yourself motivated, it's how to train yourself to work without it. And when I read this, I tend to associate motivation with inspiration. What a lot of artists would say is the inspiration to draw, the inspiration, the passion to work, that excitement that you feel that sort of drives you to make something is all very exciting. So I definitely agree with this quote because discipline is essentially how I motivate myself or how I keep myself motivated and how I force myself to work the way I do and as much as I do. So I thought I would break this topic down. So I've got a list here of different ways that I cultivate discipline when I'm working. So the first thing I would talk about is work hours. And obviously I do this full time and I totally understand if you have school or work and plushing is just a part-time thing for you. I wouldn't worry too much about forcing yourself to work if plushing isn't, even if crafting or art, if it's not your full-time job, then if it's just a hobby, then I wouldn't push yourself to work in this way. Just enjoy it for the sake of it and how you like to do it, but I'm going to talk about relying on it financially. So with work hours, I find it's really important both to motivate yourself to work more as well as not to burn out, to have defined work hours. I work full time and I make sure that I start work. I get up I get up at about 6:30 every day. I start work at either 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and I make sure that I definitely start work at that time. It's also good to go through the motions of getting yourself ready to work. If you go to work in quotes in your pajamas every single day, you're probably not going to take your work as seriously. So I like to make the effort to brush my hair, put on some nice clothes. I don't have to be anything amazing, but I'm not going to go work in my pajamas, which is what I'm getting at here. So get ready as if you were going to an everyday job. This will get you in a good mindset for working. And make sure that you start and end at a certain time. So if say I start work at 8 and I might finish at 5:30 in the afternoon, and even if I'm halfway through a project, I will force myself to put it down at 5:30 because that's the end of my work day, and this stops me from getting burnt out. So I'm not going to work too much, burn myself out by working more than I need to. So treat your plushing, if you're doing it for financial gain, treat it like a job, and it'll be good for you. It's good for motivation. I thought this carries on to my next topic, which is distractions. So having set work hours helps with distractions because you have to sort of be strict with your distractions while you're working. So if your friend rings you up while you're working and says, would you like to come over and do blah, 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 you have to be strict and say, okay, no, this is my work time, these are my work hours, and don't let yourself get distracted. So some distractions that can be good or bad is watching TV while you're working or listening to music or videos. I try to I guess it depends on your habits as a person. I know that if I'm watching videos that require me to watch, not just listen, it will distract me. So I try to watch videos like podcasts, lectures, talks like that, that you can just listen to and you don't actually need to watch the video. That's the same. Like, don't go watching a subtitled anime while you're working. Try and watch and listen to shows that aren't super engaging, that you're going to be sitting there waiting for the next cliffhanger while you're working, because it is very distracting. Music I find pretty good, not as distracting. Some people say it can be. I've heard many times that it's better to listen to music without words because words are more distracting to your brain because you'll follow them along. But really, I don't find music that distracting. It's pretty good. I don't have a TV in my sewing room. I know a lot of people have them, but I think I'd find that too distracting if a show came on that I hadn't seen before. I'd be too engaged with it. So try and find a balance with what you find engaging enough to keep you from getting bored, especially while you're doing boring tasks like hand stitching or things that don't require a lot of attention. I'll almost never watch videos or listen to anything while I'm doing more difficult things like patterning, or anything that requires me to really focus. So try and turn off your music or your videos and such when you're doing those more difficult tasks, and save those for when you're doing the boring ones like stuffing or hand stitching that don't require as much direct attention. The next thing I thought I'd talk about is working smarter. So you have those set amount of hours in your workday, and you want to get as much done as you possibly can in that time. So it does come down to practice, because the more you practice, the faster you will get. But I would also really recommend doing research. This is where research comes in. If you learn little tips and tricks from research, it can help you work smarter. There's definitely dozens of little tricks and tips that I've picked up on through experience and through research that have helped me get more out of my day. And just that repetition of all the different sewing skills that I've learnt has let me be pretty fast with how I work. I guess this depends on you and how you work, but that's what works for me. The next thing I thought I would talk about is goals. During your workday, I like to set goals. You can either write them down or just have them in your head. So, for example, one workday, my goal might be, okay, I want to do the embroidery for this plush. I want to sew it and have it stuffed by the end of the day. And I might not get all this done, but I'll try. So set realistic, it doesn't even have to be realistic goals, but just set goals for you to work on so you don't dilly-dally, so that you have those goals to work towards during the day. And even if you don't get all those goals finished, it's kept you on task, and it's stopped you from getting distracted, being, I don't know what I want to do today. So either write it down or think of goals that you want to set during the day. And with writing them down, lists can be very helpful, which is another thing I was going to talk about. I don't always do this, but if I have a very large project, I find it helps a lot to write a comprehensive list of what I need to do, what steps I need to take. So step one might be do the pattern, then test the pattern, then draw out the embroidery placement, do the embroidery, it goes on and on and on. But I found this especially helpful when I made Chrysalis, because she was so difficult just in herself, and then she had multiple outfits to make. So when you get a bit overwhelmed, I find making a list can sort of break down those tasks for you, and it is really rewarding to strike off points on that list. It's such a nice visual thing to see, when you've got lots of dashes on this massive task that you have to do. So that's really motivating to keep going with those projects. And it can also help just every day. It's just a more in-depth way of goal setting for the day, is to write down everything, but you don't have to do that. So sometimes you can just have it in your head, or it might help to write it down. The next thing, which is really important, that I thought I would talk about, is staying healthy. I know a lot of plush makers and a lot of artists that they say, you know, I don't have enough energy in the day to work as much as I would like to. And you know, I'm no health expert. I'm not some health nut. I don't exercise all the time. I don't eat perfectly. But it, you know, looking after your mind and looking after your body is really important because it will help you stay focused. It will help you have the energy to keep going through that work day. So, you know, you don't need me to tell you how to stay healthy. Get enough sleep, try not to eat crap all the time, exercise if you need to, all that sort of thing. So don't neglect your body because that your body is what gives you the energy to get through the day, and your body is your tool for the work that you do. So yeah, definitely, I think I mentioned definitely get enough sleep. That's a big one. My younger sister, she's a really bad sleeper, and she'll often stay out really late and sleep in halfway through the day. I'm not very nocturnal. I tend to get tired at about 10:30. So, you know, I guess it just depends on what you find gives you the most energy. But I think being a night owl can be pretty draining. So just work out what works for you. The next thing I would talk about is forming habits. All of these, all these ways of working come down to habit, and I'm a very habitual person, so I've always been like that. So it kind of has helped me as I've got into plush making full time. But the more you force yourself to work, the easier it's going to be. The more you get up in the morning, the easier it is. The more you start and end your work day at a certain time, the easier it's going to be. So just repetition and habit are really important. So if things seem difficult to start with, don't worry, just keep forcing yourself to do it because eventually it will become habit and it will become a lot easier for you. Another thing I thought I'd talk about is working en masse or working on individual projects. And when I started plushing full time, I thought it would be a good idea to work on lots of projects at once, do all the embroidery at once, do all the sewing at once, do all the stuffing at once, because it does save time. But for me at least, I found that it led to burnout really quickly because you were just doing the same task over and over and over again. And while it leads to making lots of plushes really quickly, I found that my work suffered a little bit from it in quality because I wasn't totally absorbed in each project individually. So I thought, you know, I'll try working on projects one at a time, and that worked pretty. That's worked pretty well. So that's what I'm doing now. I was worried that it was going to reduce my productivity, but I've actually found that the freshness of working on a new project from start to finish motivates me more, and I actually probably work about as fast, if not faster, as working on multiple projects at once. So experiment with what works for you. You might do better working on multiple projects at once, but I found it a bit repetitive and a bit draining. So I wrote down knowing when you are burnt out. I think that's important. I was getting really burnt out and really grumpy and easily upset when I was working on projects en masse. I was just overworking myself in that way, and it was very dull. So I think learning to recognize the signs of when you're feeling burnt out, think about why you're burnt out. So are you burnt out because you don't have enough energy? Are you burnt out because you're sick of working on the same sort of projects over and over again? Work out what's burning you out and then try and fix it, because it can make your work a lot happier. At least I found anyway. I find that I'm a lot happier working on individual projects one at a time. So yeah. Another thing I wrote down is managing your time. Now, the main thing I wanted to talk about here is doing mindless tasks when you could be working. So if you find yourself sitting down and watching TV for hours and hours each day and then wondering, oh, I didn't have enough time to plush today, you know, try and prioritise and realise that certain tasks like maybe playing games or watching TV or watching YouTube videos, which I'm really guilty of, just realise that these do take up a lot of the time in your day, and they don't really contribute towards your personal growth and your work ethic and your productivity. So take that into consideration. If you find that you don't have enough hours in the day, see what you can cut back that's unnecessary. If you want to be more motivated and work more, that's up to you. But yeah, and another thing is also in the opposite vein, don't deny yourself relaxation time. So that's why it's helpful to have set work hours, because you're not going to work yourself crazy all the time. But yeah, pretty much the more you cultivate discipline, the easier it gets. I know it's really hard to start with. It's like training yourself to wake up early in the morning. The first week is probably going to be really painful, and you're going to think, oh, why am I bothering to get up in the morning? But eventually it gets easier and easier, and you get to the point where I am, where you can't sleep in anymore, and you sort of think, oh, well, bugger, but it's a lot easier. So yeah, that's how I stay motivated, and those habits that I've developed over my whole life have really helped. So don't expect all of them to form overnight. So it's something that's taken me my whole life, and probably a bit of anxiety about my work, which has made me turn into a bit of a workaholic. But I hope that you guys find some of those tips helpful. If you have any questions, totally message me on Patreon, leave a comment, and I'll answer them for you. If you have any other ideas for videos that you'd like to see, let me know, because I'm trying to think of good videos for you guys every week. And that's about it. So this video is available for my $5 plus Patreon supporters. So if you're watching this video and you're not a Patreon supporter, please let me know, because stealing is wrong. I said it this time. Yeah, I'd like people to pay me for the work that I do. So that's about it, and please let me know what you guys would like to see next. I'll continue to post on Patreon all the time, as I do. If you have any suggestions, let me know. So I hope you guys find this helpful, and I hope that you can get a little bit more motivated to work on your projects. Thanks guys, see ya.